Hello, and welcome back to Your Life, Your Way. I'm your host, Kathleen McDermott, and I have a question. Are you in midlife? Are you coming to midlife? I know personally when I was going through mine, there was some stuff going on. I looked at it as, and I still do, is it's a time of life when just things start to rumble. Just things, it's like a volcano is how I felt. This volcano, something's happening and it was erupting. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And my guest today is going to help us clarify what the heck is going on and how we can, I say, ebb and flow gracefully through it, sometimes not so gracefully, and that's okay too. My guest today is Louise Neil, and she is the founder of Pivoting Point Career Solutions. So you're thinking, oh, what does career solutions have to do with midlife and what I'm talking about? She's going to share that with us, and just have an open mind. But she is dedicated. Louise is dedicated to helping midlife women navigate meaningful career transitions with clarity, confidence, and most importantly, purpose. And I think you'll find this topic today that Louise is going to cover is something that every woman needs to listen to. Either if you're not quite there yet or you are there, it's a very important topic. And my portion and my experience began with the letter P. So, Louise, I'm going to turn it over to you and have you explain what that P talks about. I don't mean pivoting point.
It could mean purpose.
It could mean purpose.
Right?
Yes.
It could mean pride. It can mean, it can also mean peri-menopause.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
There it is. All the talk about menopause, but no one was talking about peri-menopause. Before we get into that, could you please tell us a little bit more about you and your journey?
I would love to. Sometimes I never know where to start on the journey because it doesn't feel like there was a beginning and it doesn't really feel like there's an end. I'm in the middle for sure. And I think this part of my journey really started when I was in my corporate life. I had this huge corporate job. I was doing all the things. I was in project management and IT, and I was climbing my way up that corporate ladder, and I was pretty good at my job until I wasn't, until I started to feel really kind of disconnected from what I was doing. I found myself in a place doing things that didn't bring me purpose or joy. And right. And I started to feel really disconnected from the work that I was doing. And I decided to take a break before I had a breakdown and went on a little sabbatical to kind of take stock of what was going on. And so this is all happening in my mid to late 40s, right? This real like disconnection, trying to find purpose in what I'm doing, like a deep purpose. What kind of impact am I making? What kind of legacy am I creating? Yeah. And you know, I think as women in that age, right, in that midlife place, we actually do start to question all of those big things. And it shows up. It shows up at work. It shows up in our relationship to work and what we're doing. And so, like, that's where I was, like 7, 8 years ago, really, really questioning my purpose while I was in peri-menopause, and I didn't even know it.
Oh, I knew. Oh, God.
Did you?
Oh, Lord. Well, initially, I had a feeling because I had to do my own research because I had a physician that just was not listening. So I started doing and that's how I really figured out what it had to be. And I knew my mom had gone through it early.
Okay.
So that was what kind of triggered to me. But boy, what a journey that is.
It is and it's a journey that we take on our own because we don't really talk about it openly and discuss really sound ways to transition through menopause. We get bombarded by a lot of like social media and people saying like this is the right way or this is the thing you have to do. There's lots of controversy, and every woman's journey is their own journey.
Different.
Yeah, and it's their own journey to purpose that I think we're really on through perimenopause and menopause is that reconnecting. I didn't know I was suffering symptoms that I call the invisible signs of perimenopause. And so it's not hot flashes because we all know about hot flashes and what happens. We all know that, our period's going to end one day. And so maybe there's some things going on with that. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. I found myself having some depression, anxiety. I started having panic attacks that I hadn't had in decades. And I was starting to really suffer from brain fog and started to question my own sanity and what was going on.
Yes.
And it's those things that we often don't think about when we think about this midlife transition. We think about maybe the physical aspects of getting through it, but not the emotional or the mental ones. They're huge. And
Very much so.
that's it's really really tough sometimes to get through that when we're not talking about it, and it's extra tough when we're trying to reconnect to ourselves and find our purpose, and then all of this other stuff is going on too. Like those two transitions happen at the same time, plus all these other transitions too, right, Kathleen? Like kids are leaving home,
That's
right?
the one I was thinking of as you were saying that. Yes. And I
Huge
have twins, so
transition.
they were both leaving at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have all of these transitions like just like colliding together. And and I want to help women kind of with more clarity and confidence put their feet on the ground and be able to thrive through all of this chaos and really use it to reconnect with their values and their purpose.
Very well said. I wish I had was having this conversation with you back then. I laugh and I do joke about it. I can do that now, but it was a very difficult time. Just trying to get physicians to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
The only answer was put you on you have that chemical imbalance. You need to be on an antidepressant.
Oh, yeah.
Took me years to get off from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was a very difficult time. And like you said, you question your own sanity. I thought I was losing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's how do you, and I find this as women, we just knuckle down and we get through things. We just do, and we just keep moving forward at 200 miles an hour. So when you say you help women, and how do you get women to open up and have the conversation?
So it's a little bit of education. It's a whole lot of community, and it's being brave enough to actually start to have the conversation. And I often find that like we know as women, like we know something's off,
Mhm.
right? We deeply know what that is. And it's often something that happens in our lives or at work where it's like, whoa, that is a signal for me to start thinking differently. We're very smart. We're very smart people.
We are.
And really tapping into that and knowing that if you continue on that path that you're on now, it's going to lead to burnout, overwhelm. And so the women that I talk to are like, enough is enough. I don't know what's next, but I know that this is not it because of what's been going on. And it's this coming home to self that is
Mm.
so important in this stage. And then to know that you're not alone.
That's
That this
huge.
is right. This happens to us. And so that community piece is really big. And just being able to be side by side with someone else to say like, hey, like, how are things over there? Um, and really get that sense of belonging as you're going through this transition.
And I'm a firm believer that sisterhood is critical to our
Oh, it is.
thriving. When I talk about
Yeah.
thriving, and
Yeah.
sisterhood is a missing link if you're not giving yourself the time to be in that and helping to fuel others while they're fueling you. It makes the journey tougher. It really
Hmm.
does.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing that happens to our brains during menopause that I've been learning about. I've been devouring this because I feel like I don't know so much about my own body. Like it's, I don't want to say it's shameful, but it kind of feels like I should know these things. And we just don't talk about it. Our medical profession, like they don't talk about it either. There's been such a lack of investment in not just women's health, but women at menopause, because we live in a society that kind of carries that stigma around like, you're old. So
Oh,
why should we do that?
break the cycle of old. That's a whole other conversation, but go ahead.
Well, it's so interesting. And so here in Canada, the amount of people, the amount of women that actually leave work because they are in perimenopause and having symptoms that they just can't get a handle on is is hurting us economically as a country. So this goes across all industries, it goes across all professions, it goes across all levels of leadership and workplace. And it breaks my heart to think about the fact that because we can't get the support or because we don't know what's happening, we feel like we need to step back. We need to not go for maybe that promotion or not go for that riskier role because we're dealing with our own health issues. We're in a bit of a crisis to try to figure out what is all going on. And we can't just go to the doctor and say, hey, I'm in perimenopause. And they go, oh, and they write a script and they go,
Yeah.
right. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-mm.
And so we need time to be able to navigate this and figure this out. And that's through education. And it does take a little bit of time. And I really feel like menopause at work can really, really help us educate ourselves, learn more about menopause, but also learn about how to ask for maybe an accommodation or some type of support that can really help us. Because once we're on the other side of this small health crisis that it feels like we're going through, there are decades that we still have to give to an organization or to our own business. We
Mhm.
have so much to offer. And we get into a beautiful place of like connected to purpose and driving impact and wanting to leave a legacy. And those things come with a deeper understanding of self, but the ability to be able to go deep
Yeah.
and not have to worry so much about, am I going crazy or what's happening to me?
And that's, yeah, again, with, a lot of times I felt like I was losing my mind. And I think when you're talking about purpose and coming back to self, that was a beautiful also part of midlife was that rumbling in the volcano wasn't just the perimenopause symptoms, but I
Yeah.
do believe, I know it was also my soul saying, it's time. It's
Mm-hmm.
time. You need to stop living in this box in this way, and you need to step into who you truly are meant to be, who you truly are. And that brings a whole new, and that shines and brings forth what you have to give to your relationships, your work, everything.
Yeah, it's the ripples, right? That
Yes.
we send out so many ripples, and not just to different areas of our lives, but we send out these ripples to different people in our lives. When we start showing up or being able to show up who we truly are on the inside, it's not just about the work we're doing, but it's about other people going, look at the work that she's doing. And they're like, I want to do something like that. And it's just by the act of showing up, in that truly embodied and empowered place that we actually start sending signals out like mad. And we need that right now. We need to be sending those signals out to say there's a different way to look at midlife. There's a different way to look at aging. And this is it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that education you mentioned, it's not just educating ourselves and each other, but we have to educate those that are around us, which includes the men as well, because there is this stigma, this attitude about midlife and going through how our bodies are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And society doesn't place the kindest of perceptions around that.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you find with your clients that you're breaking through that stigma?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I I was just at an event. I was just telling you in the green room before. I was just at this like corporate stuffy event,
Mhm.
and I got up to talk about what I'm doing, and I said I'm a menopause educator, and I talked about what it is that I want to bring into the world and how I'm growing my business and what I'm doing. And how menopause combines with career purpose, and how we can use both of these together to transition ourselves into this thriving space. And the people in the audience were all nodding, and it didn't matter what your gender was, right? People understand that it is a systemic issue that holds women back from being fulfilled in their careers. We carry we carry career junk with us our whole lives, right? Should we be working? Should we be a parent? How do we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
both? How do we climb the ladder? Or we're climbing the ladder too fast. We're too aggressive. We're too bitchy. We're too this. We're too
All of
that.
that.
We're all of
Yes.
those things, right?
It's exhausting.
And we keep carrying it and carrying it. And I think in midlife, it's just really time that we put it down. Um, but there are people out there because guess what? No matter who you are on this planet, you either are going through, have gone through, or will go through menopause and perimenopause, or you know somebody who will.
Mhm.
That's just the facts. It touches everyone on this planet.
That's right. So, how do you find that you've come back from your journey of perimenopause and you're going through menopause?
Ooh. Um, so one of the things that I've found really important for me is this grounding in understanding like what do I have control over? What what can I be doing that can really help me? And so I'm suffering more around some of these invisible signs, right? My brain fog, my lack of sleep, these things. And so sleep and rest is one of these foundational pieces that I think is so crucial. Working on my sleep hygiene and really starting to understand and track what's working and what's not working. I'm all about experiments. And so I'm really looking at this as an experiment so that I can start to understand myself more. And so my sleeping, my nutrition, and my exercise, they all play into how I feel about myself. And when I can look at those foundational pieces, then I start to see, okay, so how am I now able to contribute to my purpose? Because I've gone through that, you know, exercise of like, what is my purpose?
Mhm.
I started my business based on my purpose. And so knowing that is key to keeping me grounded and then working on those foundational pieces. And I need support through that. I belong to a menopause group. I'm researching and constantly reading about menopause and what's happening because I'm fascinated by it. But that's connecting me to a community of women who are also fascinated by it, which fills my buckets like you would not believe.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and so it's understanding that we have so much power to look after ourselves through this. But when we can look after ourselves, that's really how we can step into being more fulfilled and defining our purpose. But that's been my journey. But everybody's journey is different,
Exactly.
right? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a one size fits all, but it is about a recognition of like, what do I have control over in this moment? What can I be doing? What can I try to be doing? And taking back control of not only your career journey, because that's where this all started from, is like, how do we get control of our career journey? But this is like, how do we get control of our menopause journey, our life journey, and be the driver again instead of the passenger?
And that's so important because we are so conditioned to be, excuse me, be the people pleaser, or to be worrying what other people think,
Mm-hmm.
and that we have to do. We have these obligations, these responsibilities, and let's face it, self care, putting yourself first, is, oh my gosh, that's selfish, and it isn't.
It isn't.
We all came into this world given, when we're given the gift of life. Each, you were given your gift of life. I was given mine, and it doesn't, nowhere did it say we have to allow everyone else to tell us how we should live our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we really need to put that down, as you say, let it go, and start standing and honoring the life that we've been giving and live it on our terms. It doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
kick the people you love to the curb, but it means exploring yourself, what is important to you. And as
Yeah.
you do this, the thing that I know it took me forever to realize, but in doing that and learning to stand on my own 2 feet and live life how what was right for me, it just supported and gave so much more freedom to those that were close to me and that are my loved ones. It gives them room to flourish and thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it works the opposite of how we've been operating.
Yes.
Right? We've been giving and giving and giving for the majority of our lives. And we get to midlife and we're like, I can't give anymore, right? Like our tanks are empty.
Mm-hmm.
And we start to look at how do we fill our tanks? So then we start to fill our tanks and we go through this, "Ooh, should I be filling my tank? Is it selfish?" Like we go through all of this kind of contemplation. But once we realize, it's like, guess what? Like when our tanks are full, we have so much more to give. It
Mm-hmm.
like amplifies the giving and our ability to continue because we have nourished ourselves. We have looked after ourselves, and not just health wise, but also like in our careers too. We've taken back control of this journey that we're on. And we really do start to nourish the people around us.
And we do it so freely from a
Yeah.
soul, heartfelt way that doesn't feel like we have to. We want to.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Kathleen, what's the one thing that you wish you knew 7 or 8 years ago?
Well, 7 or 8 years ago, let's see, I moved here 5 years ago, and 7 or 8 years ago, it's kind of off topic, but it isn't off topic
Okay.
because it is also happening in midlife to many. That would have been about the time I became my mother's caregiver.
Mm,
And that is definitely a part of midlife that changed the
yeah,
dynamics.
yeah,
And if you're in menopause, now you have this whole different life going on.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
wish I had known, I've learned so much, and I wish I'd known how that was going to change over the years and strengthen, be a beautiful experience, one that I'm grateful for, but also to know what the struggles were going to be ahead of time
mm,
so that I could be better, do better.
yeah, yeah. That sandwich place we find ourselves in, right?
Yeah.
Where it's kids and parents and trying to be the honey that sticks the sandwich together, and at the same time trying to like figure out who we are. Like maybe we're not honey, maybe we're peanut butter, like who knows, right? But we can lose that because we're trying so hard to keep it all together. But being in the moment and really deeply appreciating the gift that we're given, to be able to spend time with our loved ones like that. Yeah, it's a tough spot sometimes. Yeah.
But worth it.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
So
Yeah.
how do you help someone? Because I've been there. I worked and then I stayed at home with my boys for a while. And it's so funny because I didn't go back into the type of work I was doing. I wanted to do something to be on their schedule. So I actually, and I wouldn't trade it. I went and became a school bus driver for their district. So I was on their schedule. That was such a huge growth. And granted, there were some days I wanted to bang my head against the wall, but I loved engaging with my older students, my middle high kids. My
Yeah.
middle ones were great, with the exception of one or two. But that having that experience going through what I was going through, because back then that's when I was in the heat of my midlife
Hmm.
adjustments. Um, but that was a great experience for looking at me from a different angle. I went to a completely different
Yeah.
type of work, completely
Yeah.
different. I mean, it could not have been more different. So, how do you help someone who's going through this midlife and they're in a career and or maybe they've been home with their children for a while and now
Hmm.
they're ready to go back. But how do you do it with a purpose? Because this right here was definitely, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a purpose that I needed because of the way we
Yeah.
interacted. And I was good for them and they were good for me. So there was a
Yeah.
purpose there that I didn't realize when I first started. So, how do you navigate and help someone to say, okay, what do I want to experience next?
Yeah. Your example is such a great example of how I start with all of my clients. And that's around understanding your values. Like our values change throughout our lives, right? And
Mhm,
your story is beautiful because it's like, what do I value the most right now? And I value the time with my kiddos.
mhm.
And how can I make it so that that's the number one thing that I'm leaning into right now. But oftentimes we're operating on this like outdated manual because we have values that we kind of think we had when we were 20 or
Or were they our
25,
parents' values and not really
or
ours?
exactly, or we carry that baggage with us. Just those are all the shoulds.
Yeah,
Anytime you hear yourself saying I should do this, I should do that, more often than not it's something you picked up from your childhood
yeah,
and it stuck to you. But it's really about that unpacking and then reevaluating, like, what are your values? What does it mean? Right? When you think of family and kiddos, it's like, what does that mean to you deeply? How would you describe it to a stranger if they stopped and said, "Hey, tell me about your values?" Like really understanding what that is, because it's not just the word, it's what it means and what it feels like in your body. And when we can deeply understand our values, they start to become the guardrails. So, guess what?
great.
Now we've just eliminated a whole bunch of risky stuff that you were afraid to do because you have guardrails up. You know when things aren't going to work out because you can feel the crunch. You can feel your values being misaligned. You can start to feel that slow down. And then you're like, ooh, well, that's not the thing. And so then you course correct. And because you have this updated operating manual, you start to really deeply know yourself. You start to experiment differently. You start to take some risks, maybe that you wouldn't take before. And when you can really start to honor and start to live in those values, then it's understanding your gifts, your strengths, your talents, and your superpower. And when we can combine all of those things, then we really start to put a structure around what is it I want to be doing in the world. We might not have a job title or an industry or a job description, but we certainly have something that comes from inside you because that's how we got to the outside. We did all of that work first. And that's the key. That's foundational. We can't just skip to like the job boards and say, I want to pivot into architecture because I was a chemist before. Like, it doesn't quite work that way.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think one other thing, would you agree that the rumbling, the volcano, the soul calling, I think midlife is also when we really begin to understand and recognize our intuition. And there's so much power in
Yes.
our intuition.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, right? Because we forget that we have this body of knowledge that lives below the neck. And when we can learn to tap into that,
Mhm.
it really starts to open up all kinds of avenues and opportunities. And I'm not just talking about work. Like these are relationship based. These are like all kinds, financing, like you name it, right? When we
Exactly.
can lean into our intuition and really start to know the power of our bodies, um, the sky's the limit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
So
can
glad you
really
brought
ask
that up.
yourself, what's next?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
next? It's amazing what you really think and find that you do that you thought, oh, I could never do that. But then once you do, it really can unleash the wild woman,
It does.
your wild side.
It can. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what
I
other points would you like to really put across today and have someone say, I'm ready. I'm ready to explore and see what the rest of next stage of my life can be?
Yeah, I think it's folks who are starting to question, like, am I doing my soul's calling, or am I doing my best work? Am I able to be my best self? And it's just this tiny little tickle that you get, kind of like somewhere in your body. Does it come from your head? It comes from somewhere in your body when you're like, what if? Or is there something? And it's this little tickle of a question mark that really can start the conversation. And I want people to honor that. I want people to know how deeply resourceful they are, because it's that little tickle that starts, like, it's a little tiny spark that leads to the volcano that you were talking
Yeah.
about. And to not dismiss it, don't put it aside, like, explore that. It's not as scary as you think. Like, Kathleen, I know you talk about a volcano, but it's like, it's
Trust me, you
this,
won't die.
right, but it's like this beautiful volcano. It's like this beautiful, like, warmth and
Mhm.
fulfillment that comes from inside you. It's not devastation and fires and all kinds of things, but it really is something that needs to come out. The more we push it down, the more we ignore that tickle, that spark, then it can explode in a completely different way.
Unhealthy way. And it's you
Unhealthy.
that's trying to come out. It's you
Yeah.
that's truly trying to come
Yes.
out.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And so I just want people to honor that. I want people to be able to just say, like, if you're having that little question or you're having that little tickle, then reach out and let's have a conversation so that we can explore that in a really safe environment. I want to make sure all of my clients feel safe and held, because this can be really scary stuff. And it doesn't have to be, but when you're in a space that I create, like, the sky's the limit. We turn that little spark into, right, a little campfire that grows, and we nurture it so that it's feeling really, really good.
Can you offer, let's say I'm one of your potential clients and I am in the midst of the change going on and I have the fog and I'm just not clear and I'm feeling like, what the heck is going on? What do I do? And I'm probably a little bit scared because I'm not understanding what's going on with my body.
Hmm.
For someone who is in that and they might be listening to this, hopefully they're listening to this, and let's say, but what can I do right at this moment to help myself feel okay right this minute? How can I even get to the point of reaching out to you, Louise, and having a conversation with you? But what can I do right in this moment to help me take that next step?
Uh, it's it's this offering that I have. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. And those two things can bring you back to self, to be grounded. And so, my recommendation would be, if you're really, really feeling like you're starting to lose control, how do you come back to yourself? And that's usually through some, I'm going to say meditation. I was going to say the M word, but it's not menopause. A little bit of meditation, but not in the sense of like guided meditation. I want you to just take some time to sit with yourself and be grounded in who you are and to know that it's okay. I want everybody to know that this volcano, this thing, this whatever's going on, however lost or lonely it feels, that's part of this transition. It's part of what's going on, and it's okay. It's temporary, and we'll be able to get to the other side. So I wanted to offer that, and I also want to offer, I think, too, Kathleen, is I talked a lot about values on your show today, and I want to be able to give folks a little bit of guidance, I guess, around that. And so I have this really great workbook that helps people walk through their values. And so I think that's a really good thing to kind of start thinking about and really start to understand more about who you are and what you're bringing into this transition so that you can navigate it with clarity and confidence.
Beautiful. If you send me the link to that, I will make sure it's in the show
I
notes.
will. And it's a special offer. I never offered this before. I'm just going to offer it
Meant to be.
to your folks because,
Thank you.
yeah, it feels really good. And I think it's going to be really, really helpful to start bringing that calmness, right? That you're in control. Lots of C words: calm, control, clarity,
Curiosity,
confidence,
courageous,
curiosity.
yes.
Yeah, lots of stuff.
May I ask you another question? Would
Hmm.
you suggest not waiting until you are there, but learn before so that you can, once it begins, then you can begin to navigate it with a little bit more education, yes, but also a little bit more groundedness and peace of mind?
Hmm.
When do you think I mean, I started early. My mom started early. In fact, that's why I had trouble getting pregnant because my body was already starting to change.
Yeah.
And we went through fertility treatments. I had twin boys. Yay. Um, but had I known, because let's face it, in our 20s, we're not thinking of this stuff.
No.
But I started early in my 30s to change. So, what would you say to someone who's, I don't need to listen to this, I'm only 29 or I'm only 35 or.
Oh, yeah, because like we said, right, everyone's journey is a little bit different. And so when you can educate yourself just around some of the signs and symptoms of what's really happening, then when you start into perimenopause, because there's no test that we take.
No.
It's not like you get a blood test and somebody says, oh, look, you're in perimenopause. And you're like, okay, great. What does that mean? It's like, it's these little signs and these symptoms that start where you can now use that to say, ooh, I'm into the transition. And so I recommend tracking. Tracking's actually saved me so much time and energy. So tracking your cycle. I did this for a long time, but I didn't really understand why. You track your cycle because as soon as it starts to become irregular, guess what? Your hormones are fluctuating. So when you start to understand that, you start to understand, ooh, okay, so maybe I'm entering perimenopause. Maybe it's early. If it's early, talk to a doctor. Talk about early menopause. Talk about what it means. Talk about it. And guess what? If your doctor doesn't know anything about it, find one that does, right? The
Can't
Menopause
stress that enough.
Foundation. Yeah, the Menopause Foundation has information on where to connect with a health practitioner that knows about menopause. Do not assume that your doctor knows or your OBGYN knows. It is not true. And so if you don't like what you're being told or they're completely unhelpful, like trust yourself and find someone who is. Early menopause can bring on all kinds of trouble down the road. So we want to be on top of it. You want to know what's going on with your body. And so those kinds of things can be really, really helpful just to help you understand your own journey. It's not the same always. Like we can't get that information from our moms. We can talk to our moms about it, but it might not be the same. We can talk to our sisters about it, but again, it might not be the same. So we don't want to rely on that information. We want to know what's going on internally with our own health, so that, and tracking has been like phenomenal. I wish that I only started tracking when I thought I was in like the menopause change, like when things had stopped. And I wish I had years of data to really deeply understand, so that I can advocate for my own health, because now I know when things started to go awry. I know when I started to have hot flashes. I knew when I started to have incontinence or depression, or when did the panic attacks start, or like all of these things. What's going on with my hair? What's going on with my skin?
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't know these signs or symptoms, then we're blind. And so they happen to us and we don't think much about it. And so that has really, really been the biggest thing that I wish I had done so much sooner.
Well, now you're teaching others to do that. So that's a beautiful thing. And everything you've shared today is so important because there's so much as, excuse me, as women that we don't talk about. We just keep, like I said, barreling forward 200 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things that I just would love to have us start talking, stop hiding,
Oh
come
yeah,
out into the light and have these conversations because we're all going through it. We're all going through
we
these
are.
things
We are.
and we're stronger together.
Yeah.
We are definitely stronger together. We can
Yep.
fuel one another. So I will absolutely, Louise, give us a website or something, tell people where they can find you. And I will also put that in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me at my website. It's louiseneil.com. So just my name with a .com after it. I'm also Louise Neil on LinkedIn. That's where you're going to be able to connect with me the most, is on LinkedIn. I'm the most active there. I've also started a Substack blog talking about menopause, and it's called Menomentum. And I'll make sure that you have that link.
Please.
But that's where we really start to dive into this idea of where career and menopause collide, and how do we how do we survive that car accident?
But your car accident, the volcano, it's like, it's really not that bad.
It's not. It's not. It's not at all. It can feel that it is, but it's really, really not. When you have the community, the tools, and the resources
Yes.
to help you navigate through it. Yeah.
Louise, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough because this is definitely a very important topic. And I will have, again, all of Louise's contact information in the show notes as well as my own. Please don't hesitate to reach out and have a conversation. Even if you're 30, if you are 35 or you're 25, be curious. Be curious enough to start learning now. Don't wait until later because
Yeah.
when the time comes and you start to notice things, you're going to go, oh, I heard about that and I've learned about that. So I don't need to be scared. I just can take the steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you all
Love it.
for being with us today and for listening to this wonderful episode. Please, please share this with another woman or many women because as we said, we're all either have been or going, we're all going to experience this change. And it's not
Yeah.
something that happens, a week or a month or 1 year. This is a
Yeah.
lengthy period of time. And
Yeah.
it's a time that really can be a beautiful time of life. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being a part of the Your Life, Your Way community. I'm so grateful for you. I wish you a whole lot of peace, many, many blessings, and namaste. Bye bye now.
Bye now.